Hi there, this is Derek Ritter from RitterCreek.com and Ritter's War Table on Facebook, and this is the Tanks101 video. Now I just want to tell you this is tank basics first step. So there's a lot of things that are left out, but there's enough to get you going on some simple AFV versus AFV scenarios without infantry maybe. There's no examples of overruns or close combat. So basic stuff like moving to hit, to kill numbers, stuff like that, and a little example at the end. So like I said, it's just for beginners, and maybe we'll come out with a Tanks 102 after this, so so we can get into a little bit more in depth how the vehicles work. All right, thanks for watching. Alright, so first thing we're going to talk about is the movement type of all vehicles. So the first one we have in line right here, that would be a motorcycle type movement. And then moving him away. Next we have the armored car. Now we have, oh, the motorcycle is white, by the way, a white counter. Obviously a motorcycle by the drawing. Armored car, we know it's an armored car because the movement points, it has one white circle around it. So that means it's an armored car. All right. Then we go to fully tracked. Fully tracked has the oval around the movement points, around the 16. See, it's an oval. All right. Then the next one we have is the half track, and that's a little white circle with an oval. So you can see why they use that for the half track. Then the last one we're going to show is the truck. Now the truck has two white circles. Sometimes it's hard to see, especially like on the British. It's hard to make out sometimes whether it's an oval or two white circles, but you can always check your vehicle notes to find out which one's which. Now the reason it is important is because the different movement types spend different amounts to cross different terrain, to enter into different terrain, and they also pay different bog checks for entering different types of terrain. So it might be easier for a fully tracked, and some they're restricted completely. So, and for as an example, a fully tracked vehicle can cross a wall, but no other type of movement point can cross a wall. To move in the open, a tank, a fully tracked or a half track only pays 1, but an armored car will pay 3. A truck pays more. I don't remember if it's 4 or 5. So it's important to know what kind of wheels are on the car, on the vehicle. So next we're going to talk about the armor. So first in our list we have this truck right here, all the way to the left. He is unarmored. Now we know he's unarmored because these right underneath the movement points is going to be its armor factors, and when it's stars instead of numbers, that means they're unarmored. So the truck is unarmored. Next we have, this one has numbers, as you can see, but let me get this a little closer. Has numbers, but there's a little star T down below it, so that means it's partially armored. So the turret is not armored for the rear target facing. Okay, next we have open top. Now this one has armor on the front, side, rear, but it's open top, and we know that because it's white. It's white on the inside of the vehicle depiction. This one here that we were looking at before, that's also open top because it's also white. And then the last one we have is fully armored, and that would be like this. So you can see it's not white, it's the background color of the nationality, so in this case it's blue. So that means that it is closed top and it's fully armored. Okay. So we're going to talk about the different types of possible turrets or lack of turrets now. So our first example will be no turret at all. So we know there's no turret because there's no box or circle around the vehicle. Our next one will be single-man turret. So this is exactly like restricted slow turret. These two are almost identical, except this one, the one-man turret, will will get recalled if he's under a little stun, because there's only one guy up there, so if he gets wounded, they're getting off the board. Our next one will be slow turret. That'll be like this armored car with a thin square around the depiction, and then our fast turret will be a circle around it. There's one more. There's a gyro-stabilized turret, but that's only by SSR, so we'll leave that out for this. So basically what that means is to turn your turret, the non-turreted vehicle has to turn its hull too. The restricted slow turret is going to pay +2 for the first hex, as all the boxed ones will pay a +2 for the first hex that they turn their turret, and the quick turret will pay a +1 only. Single-man turrets and restricted slow turrets, they need to be buttoned up in order to fire. If they're crew exposed, they cannot fire their weapons. Okay, next we're going to talk about the armor factors themselves. So the first number is the hull armor factor in the front facing. So this would be a 4, this would be an 11, this would be a 6, this would be a 4. Now, if it gets hit in the turret, if, like on this one, there's no circle or square, then it stays a 6. If there is a circle, it goes down to the next column. If there's a square, it goes up the next column. So you're going to find those armor factors, that table, on the C7.31 AP to kill table. So the armor factors go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 11, 14, 18, 26. So in this particular case, if this little tank destroyer was hit in the hull in the front, he would have a 4 armor factor. If he was hit in the turret in the front, and I know they don't have turrets, but we still call it a turret because it means the upper superstructure, then it goes from a 4 down to a 3 on the column. If this one gets hit in the hull in the front, he's an 11. If he gets hit in the turret in the front, because he's boxed, it goes up to the next one, and the next one on the column is a 14. So he goes from an 11 to a 14. This one, in the hull he's a 6. In the turret he's a 6, because there's no circle or square. And in this one, if he gets hit in the turret, he goes from a 4 down to a 3. Now for the side and the rear, it's the exact same thing. So that's the second number. So he would be a 1, whether he be hit in the side turret or hull, he's still a 1. He's still an 8. He would be a 4 in the turret, a 3 in the hull, because he's got the box around him. And he would be a 2 in the hull and a 1 in the turret because he's got the circle around him. So he goes down if he gets hit in the turret. So the numbers you actually see only represent the hull, and then the squares or the circles represent whether their turret is inferior or superior to their hull armor. Now we're going to talk about the actual vehicle size. If the 2 armor factors are both white, then it's an extra small target. If one of them is white, then it's a small target. If they're both black, it's a normal target, no modifiers. If one of them are red, it's a large target, and if both of them are red, it's an extra large target. And pretty much the larger the target, the easier it is to hit. So it's easier to hit a King Tiger than it is to hit a Kubelwagen. But of course it's not easier to kill King Tiger than a Kubelwagen. But he's a larger target, so it's easier to hit. Alright, so the next group of numbers we're going to look at is below the armor factors. So in this case there's none. In this case there's a --5. This one there's a 3/5, and this one there's a 3/5/2. So this represents the machine guns, the onboard machine guns of the AFV. So this one has none because there's nothing written down. So the numbers are going to follow in this order: bow machine gun, coax machine gun, anti-aircraft machine gun. So over here we have dash for the bow machine gun, so it does not have one, and then 5 for the coax. The bow machine gun, by the way, is the hull machine gun, so it's the one that sits on the front of the tank usually, and whichever way the covered arc of the tank is, and we'll get into covered arcs in a minute, then that's the direction that the machine gun is pointing. The coax machine gun will be affixed to the turret, usually pointing forward. So whichever direction the turret is facing, that's the way that the coax can shoot. Then the last number is the anti-aircraft machine gun. So in order to fire the anti-aircraft machine gun, you do have to be crew exposed. In most cases, there's a couple of exceptions to that, like the remote-controlled anti-aircraft machine guns on certain AFE. All right, next let's talk about movement. So every vehicle has movement points, and they're in the top right-hand corner. So in this case, it would be a 33. Circle around it, like we said before, means he spends armored car movement points. So you can spend up to 33 movement points during your movement phase. You can actually get an extra quarter of your movement points on top of that, but for every extra movement point, you're adding a +1 DRM on an ESB roll. We'll talk about that in a little bit and how dangerous it is, especially when you're the British or the Germans. So when you're either in a stopped state or you're in a motion state. When you're stopped, in order to move, you have to spend 1 movement point to start. Certain vehicles, like the Tigers and the Panthers, and there's some other ones that have either a red number for movement points or an asterisk next to it, can either become immobilized, catch on fire, or just stall. So always read your vehicle notes to find out what applies to that particular vehicle. So in order to go from stopped to moving, you have to spend 1 to start. In order to go from moving to stopped, you have to spend 1 to stop. So and then to change your covered arc, so every vehicle is going to be pointed at a hex spine. So a hex spine will be where 3 hex sides meet. So that'll be 1, 2, 3. So it'll be the little point of the star. So you do not point a vehicle like this down this way. You point it at a hex spine. So his covered arc will go down this way and this way. If he's pointed this way, his covered arc will be this, this, and everything inside of there. Now that applies to shooting, and that applies to moving. So in order to change that, he's going to have to spend 1 movement point. So if he's in a stop state, as an example, he would have to spend 1 to start, and then another 1 to turn his covered arc. So he's at 2, and let's say he'd want to stop right there. He'd spend a 3rd 1 to stop. Now he's stopped again, and he's facing a different direction. Now, every vehicle has a cost to enter terrain. So you look it up on the chart. So the chart is the terrain effects chart. I'm not sure what the number of that chart is. But as an example, if you look under the column for grain, if grain is in season at the time, and you look at armored car, you're going to see it's a 4. So he would go, back to our previous example, he'd go 1 to start, 2 to turn, and then another 4, bring him to 6 to get to here, another 4, bring him to 10. Vehicles can also move in reverse, but you have to spend a deliberate point from stopped to start in reverse, and it has to be declared. So you would, if he was here and he wanted to move in reverse, he would say 1 to start in reverse, and then it's 4 times your normal cost of terrain to move in reverse. Now if you look on the armored car table, with open ground, it's 3 movement points, so that would cost an additional 12 to get to U5. So he starts for 1, then spends 12, and now he's in U5. So he's at 13 in U5. Then if he wanted to go forward, he'd stop for 14, start and forward for 15, and then another 3 to go forward, 18, and so on. Now road rate, if we're on a road, and we're crew exposed, and there's no snow on the road, and you're not in the PTO, then you can move at a half a movement point per hex side crossed. It is still a full 1 to change your covered arc. So he would go half, then this is still in his covered arc, 1, turn for 1, that makes 2 total. Then you move on to here, 2.5, 3, 3.5, and so on. Next we're going to talk about vehicle bypass movement. So vehicles can bypass buildings and woods hexes. And how that works is you pay double movement point cost, and you don't actually enter the building or the woods, but you do enter along the hex side between the building and the woods. Now the rule is, if you can stand your counter up between the hex side and the building, and if you can see open ground on both sides of that, then you're allowed. It says you have enough room for your vehicle to pass. If you cannot see open ground on both sides, then it's too narrow and you cannot pass. So an example of too narrow would be right here. There's just no space. An example of lots and lots of room would be right here. Tons and tons of room. So you pay double to do the bypass. So you have to be facing the hex side. So then, let's say he's coming from here. He would go half along the road, assuming he's screw exposed, and then bypass. Now open ground for an armored car is 3, so that would be 6. And then he comes out by going here to 9, an extra 3. Now what if he wanted to continue to skirt around the side of the building? He'd have to pay 1 to turn his covered arc, and then another 6 to go down here. Now he doesn't want to go into the woods, so he's going to pay another 1 to turn, and then another 6 to go here, and then another 3, and he's out over here. And that's vehicle bypass movement. Can you stop in vehicle bypass movement? Yes, you can, but you're considered at the vertex of your front facing. So if he came down here like this, and he stopped right here, he would be, for all shots taken against him, he would be right at this vertex right here. Now, let's say he has 1 movement point left, and he wants to get a jump start on next turn, and he wants to turn. He cannot. He has to have another 2 to be able to go to here in order to spend that 1 to turn. So he's going to have to stay here until next turn. Now, he can also stay in motion in bypass, which you're going to see a lot of with people sleazing you when you have infantry in the building. So it makes them harder to kill in close combat if you're still in motion. So that's how the vehicle bypass movement works. At the end of any turn in which you are still in motion, you've spent all your movement points without spending 1 movement point to stop, you are marked with a motion counter. And then that's going to stay there until the beginning of your next movement phase. And then when you go to move this vehicle, even if you're only spending 1 to stop, you still have to spend that 1 to stop. Unless you keep going, of course. So let's say it's the beginning of your movement phase and you're marked motion already, you do not have to spend 1 to start because you're already in motion, and you just continue moving along. Okay, next we're going to talk about combat. So in order to hit something and hurt it, we have to fire at it, of course. So let's go to a clearer part of the board. Let's get to some open paint country. There we go. So we have a tiger facing off against the T-34. Not much of a fair fight, but try it anyway. So first thing we have to know is that we have to shoot in the direction that our gun is pointing. So the covered arc will be, again, it'll be, here's the vertex, so it'll be here, down this way, and everything in between. So the T-34 is definitely in its covered arc. Now if the tiger was pointed this way, then the covered arc would be going up this way, going up this way, and everything in between. The T-34 is not lying in between, so that means he's out of his covered arc. So the tiger would have to either, in order to fire at him, the tiger would have to either turn his entire body, the hull with the turret, or he could turn just the turret. So to turn just the turret, you have turret counters. All your modules come with them. These are some fancy pants ones that I like to use. They're just the only ones that are handy right now. So you can have your vehicle facing in one direction, and then your turret facing in another direction. So that might be convenient to move, you know, if he's getting ready to move out that way, but he wants to take a shot before he leaves. So you don't always have to have it pointing in the same direction. The exception to that, of course, is the non-turreted vehicles. Whichever way the vehicle is pointed, that's the way the turret's pointed, because it doesn't have a turret. Okay, so now we're going to talk about tanks hitting tanks. So we're going to look on our chart. Let's get that chart out. So it'll be the C3 two-hit table. Give you guys all a second to pull yours out. So there's 3 possible target types that you can select when firing ordnance, and a tank's gun is considered ordnance. So one you could fire at vehicles, another one you could fire at infantry, another one you could fire area. So area just means, hey, I just want to shoot some stuff into that area. You know, no specific target, let's just pound the area. So the vehicle, we're going to talk about the different columns and ranges. So the closer you are, obviously the easier it is to hit the enemy. So we're just talking about vehicle to hit now, vehicle target type. So at 0 to 6 range, the number is a 10, as you can see. There's a black number and a red number. Now, some countries use they're both 10s at 0 to 6 range, but as you get at higher ranges, the black numbers are better than the red numbers, because it just represents better optics on the sighting systems. So the Russians, for example, use the red numbers. Their optics were not as good as the German and British optics. The Americans used the red numbers up until a certain point in the war. I think it's 44. So in this particular case, we're going to look, it's 0 to 6 hexes is a 10. So pretty much the Tiger needs a 10 to hit, a 10 or less on 2 dice to hit the T-34. But there's a whole bunch of modifiers that we're going to add to this. And these modifiers include, but aren't limited to, the range we are, the type of gun we have, the fire-based to-hit modifications. So all the things that would help me or hurt me depending on my status, including things like, did I move this turn? Am I buttoned up? Do I have an armor leader? And then all the things that are target-based. Did the target move this turn? Is the target a small target? Is the target an extra large target? Is the target in some terrain? Is it in a stone building? Harder to hit in a stone building. Is it behind some hindrances like smoke or grain or something in between us? So we're going to get all those. Now those, you're going to find those modifiers, and you'll get to know them by heart very, very quickly. But those modifiers are the C5 table and the C6 table. So in this particular case, let's pretend it was the Germans' prep fire phase. The only modifier that I can really think of is there would be a +1 on the dice because the German is buttoned up. The Tiger is buttoned up. So he would add +1 to his die roll. So in effect, making it a 9 or less to hit. So it's a little bit harder to hit. Now, let's say that the T-34 moved this turn. Then you'd look under the target base C6, and then you'd find case J, which is moving vehicular target, which would be a +2. So we'd add +1 on the to-hit die roll for being buttoned up, and we'd add another +2 because the T-34 moved this turn. So now we need a 7 or less. Well, now it went from a 10 all the way down to a 7, which is just about a 50% chance, a little bit better than 50% chance. So you see your odds are disappearing quickly. Now let's say there was a burning wreck with +2 smoke in the middle. Now you need a 5 or less. Wow, this is getting pretty hard. There's also, after you take a shot at somebody, for the most part, you usually get an acquisition on the target. Let's say the German took a shot and hit or missed, doesn't matter. Then you can put this. Then the next time he takes a shot, it goes up to a -2. And so it gets easier and easier as you take more shots at them to hit them. So that's what we're dealing with first, is just to hit. So that's the first half of the process. Once we acquire a hit, we move into the to-kill roll. Now the to-kill roll, there's also modifiers that go to this, but there's the, assuming you're using armor-piercing, AP, ammunition, you're going to look on the C7.31 table. And that's going to give you a list of all the different guns, gun types in the game system, and what their base to kill number is. And the way you're going to find out if you kill them or not is you're going to take that number, you're going to subtract the armor value from the target, You're going to apply modifiers, and you're going to try to roll less than or equal to that number. So in this case, the Tiger is an 88L. So again, we're looking on our C7.31 table, and the 88L will be a 20 to kill. The armor for the T-34, doesn't matter if we hit him in the hull or the turret, is an 11. So we're going to go from a 20, we're going to subtract 11 off of it, so that means the Tiger is going to kill that T-34 on a roll of 9 or less. But there are some modifiers. Well, there may be some modifiers. So we're going to look at the target, the gun size. It's greater than 65 millimeters. At 3 to 6 hexes, which it is, there's 0 modifiers. So that's about it. So it's going to be a 9. So we roll the dice. If we roll less than what we need, so in other words an 8 or less, because we need a 9, then the tank is destroyed. If we roll half or less than half of what we need, then the tank is not only destroyed, but it's a burning wreck. So if the tank is destroyed, but not a burning wreck, the crew of the dead tank still has a chance to survive. So on the back of the counter, you're going to see a crew survival number. So in this case, it's a 5. So the player who's controlling the T-34 gets to roll 2 dice, and if he rolls a 5 or less, that crew survives and bails out of the now destroyed tank. If it's a burning wreck, of course, everybody's marshmallows inside, so they don't get to get out. Now, if you hit the number exactly, so we said a 9 was the basic to kill number. If you hit the number exactly, then it becomes shocked if it was a turret hit, or it becomes immobilized if it was a hull hit. If you roll 1 greater than the to kill number, so if we roll a 10, it becomes a possible shock. So, and then the crew of the vehicle has to roll a task check to see if they're shocked or not. On the back of tanks, there's special ammunition on some of them, like in this particular case. There's either smoke dispensers, or in this T-34's case, he has an A number. Now the A stands for APCR. On British tanks, stands for APDS, which is tungsten shells. So these are special anti-tank shells that up the power of the to kill numbers at shorter ranges. So the numbers following the A, you're going to find some numbers, and then they have exponents. The exponents stand for the year that the scenario takes place. So in this case, it would be 2, 3, 4, and 5. So if the scenario takes place in 1944, then that T-34 has an APCR number of a 6. So the player who controls the T-34, when he's taking a 2-hit shot before making the roll, he can announce if that's an APCR shot or not. So if he rolls 6 or less, then he does indeed have that APCR shot, and then you're going to look on, if it ends up being a hit, it's going to be on the APCR to kill table instead of the AP to kill table. The APCR to kill table, you should find it right below the AP, the 7.3, C7.31 table. So so it's going to be a little bit stronger than if it was just an AP hit. Now, if he rolls exactly a 6 on his 2-hit, that means that he has the shell, but it was his last one in inventory. So he's going to be marked with no APCR, or you're going to keep a side record that he has no APCR for the rest of the scenario. If he rolls greater than the number, that means he had no APCR. But here's the catch. As long as he doesn't roll a 12 and malfunction the gun, he's never taken the shot. So if he rolls a 9 on his 2-hit, that means he doesn't, and he declared it as APCR shot, and that means he doesn't have the APCR, but he never took a shot. So he can still then roll a second time for armor piercing. Now, why this is so deadly is it in effect gives you 2 chances at a 2-hit roll, usually, until you run out of that APCR. So let's say that he came around the corner, and because he was moving, he needs, I'm just going to invent this, he needs a 6 to hit. Well, that's less than 50% chance. But if he declares an APCR shot, he essentially gets 2 shots at it. So he rolls, oh, he gets a 9, oh, he misses. Oh, but now he can say, well, now I'm going to shoot AP because that shot never took place. So now I'm going to roll again, oh, I got a 5, I did hit. So it's kind of a little trick in the game. A lot of people think it's silly, but you know, it's just the way it's still a game. So you can always remember to do that. Okay, now we're going to talk about AFV with and without radios. So kind of backwards, but if on the back of the counter there's no circled R, that means it does have a radio. If it does have a circled R, like in this case, the bottom left-hand corner, that means it does not have a radio. Now in this particular case, the T-70 does have late war radios, so if it's a scenario taking place after a certain date, then they do have them. But we're just given the example. Let's say this was 1941. They have Rs. That means they have no radios. Now what that means is, in order to move without taking a task check, they have to use something called platoon movement. Now platoon movement is done in impulses. So normally what you would do when you're moving vehicles, just like infantry, unless you're moving infantry as a stack, you would say, okay, I'm going to move this guy. Start for 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Then when he's done, you go, okay, I'm going to start this guy. 1, 2, 3. All right, when you're using platoon movement, they all move together in an impulse. So it would work like this. Let's say these guys started in motion. Then they're going to spend the movement points for whoever in the group spent the most movement points. So they would go 1 as a group, and they all have to stay adjacent to at least one other member of the platoon. Then you go here, here, and here. Now, because this guy crossed a hedge, that costs 2. So now everybody in the platoon has to spend 2. So now they're at 3. So, and then they can keep going. Oh, this guy wants to go this way, so he actually has to turn. So the other 2 just sit there while this guy turns because they have to stay adjacent. So now they're at 4. Go to here, this guy crosses the hedge. 6, 7, 8, and so on. So that's how platoon movement works. Now, can a tank without a radio use non-platoon movement? Yes, they can, but they have to roll a task check. If they fail their task check, which, and by the way, whenever a task check is needed, it's the morale level of your best elite squad in your order of battle. So in the case of the Russians, it would be an 8. In the case of the Americans, it would be a 7. There's an exception for that in PTO. In the case of the Italians, it would be a 4. No, just kidding. It would be a 7, I believe. So let's say it was the beginning of the turn, and this guy doesn't want to move with this guy. He wants to do his own thing. He says, all right, I'm going to try to break away from these guys and move on my own. If he rolls an 8 or less, he can do it. If he rolls a 9 or more, not only can't do it, but he can't be part of the platoon for this turn either. His movement phase is completely over. That's how platoon movement works. And that just about covers AFV. So let's have a little demo battle just to see how this would work. So I'm just going to set up the camera at a different angle so we can see a little bit more of the map. Something else I forgot to mention is hold down. Very, very important. If a vehicle finds itself behind a wall, or in certain cases on top of a hill, then it can claim hold down status. And what that means is if a shot goes through that wall to hit that vehicle in the hull, it's considered a miss because it hits the wall instead of hitting the upper superstructure or the turret. So this tank behind this wall right here, if there was this tank firing at him this way, and he did not get a turret hit, then it's a miss. Now, also to mention, turret hit or hull hit, if on your 2-hit roll your colored die is less than your white die, then it's considered a turret hit. If they're equal, if the colored die is equal to the white die or greater than the white die, then it's a hull hit. So that tells you right away when you're hull down, you take away more than 50% of the chance that your enemy hits you. So it's very, very good to be hull down and not expose your whole body to the shot. Okay, so I set up a little mock scenario here. So it's going to be a King Tiger and some little open top tank destroyer against a T-70 and a T-34 M43. So let's start. Let's say it's the German turn. So we're going to go to prep fire. So there's no prep fire. The King Tiger can't see anybody. The tank destroyer can't see anybody. The building in the way. So now I put the Russian T-70 inside of a building. Now you can do that as long as you're closed top, fully tracked. I put the T-34 behind a wall so that he has hull down advantage, so he's a little bit harder to hit from the King Tiger. Okay, so we're going to go to our movement phase. Now the German is going to start for 1, and then because he's crew exposed, open top vehicles are naturally crew exposed unless marked otherwise. Closed top vehicles are naturally buttoned up unless marked otherwise. So he starts for 1, goes to here, that's 1.5, spent a half, but he spent 1 to start, so he's at 1.5. And then he's going to turn, make it 2.5, and he's going to go to here for 3. Now the T-70 can see him right down the hex line, so he can shoot at him right now if he wants to, but he's only seen him for half of a movement point. He might have seen him for a little bit more if he has line of sight to T2, but the T-70 doesn't want to take a chance, and he has a feeling that the tank destroyer is going to move a little bit further. So the tank destroyer is going to move a little bit further. So he was at, I don't remember, maybe 3.5, something like that. I'm going to go 4 to here, 4.5 to here, 5.5 to here, 6 to here. Now, T-70 says, I think I'm going to shoot right there. So now we're going to add up the modifiers. So we're going to look on the chart. 0 to 6 hexes, red to hit numbers, is going to be a 10. So he needs a 10 to hit him. But there's a few modifiers. As you can see, he's got 1 white armor factor, so that means it's a small target, so that's going to add a +1 on the dice. The T-70 is buttoned up. That's going to add another +1 on the dice. So that now he needs really an 8 to hit. Oh, but he's moving too. That's going to add another +2 on the dice. So far we're at +4. So now instead of needing a 10 to hit, he needs a 6 to hit. Okay, so we'll roll the dice. We said he needs a 6 to hit, and he rolls a 7. Now, that's a miss. He does get acquired, though. Now, because he spent less than 2 movement points, the T-70 cannot fire again. So, I don't remember what he was at. I think he was at 5, maybe. So he's going to turn 6. Now, tanks get rate of fire. You see on this King Tiger, the 1 in the box, that's his rate of fire. If on the colored die he rolls a 1 or less, it's as if he didn't shoot, he gets to shoot again. It still gets the effects of the shot, but he gets another shot after that, and maybe another one after that, depending if he rolls a 1 on the colored die again. That T-70, he does not have a rate of fire number, and he rolled a 5, so he's out of rate of fire, so he can't shoot anymore. But wait, there's something called intensive fire. So intensive fire is you can get 1 extra shot unless on the back of your vehicle it says, vehicle or gun, it says no IF, which stands for no intensifier. So he can get an extra shot. Now, there's a +2 added to the dice for that extra shot, and your breakdown number goes down by 2, and your original breakdown number becomes an X number, so he will become disabled if he rolls a 12. So he thinks it's just that important to hit that tank, so he's going to take that second shot. So, like we said, on a 10, it'll break him. So let's see if he hits. And he rolls a 6. So let's see if that's a hit. So the base number is a 10 at 2 hex range. Now there is a modifier for proximity, but that doesn't apply to moving targets. So we started at 10. He's moving, means that's a +2. The shooter is buttoned up, is another +1. Target is a small target, that's another +1. And intensive fire is another +2, so that's a +6, but there's a -1 for being acquired, that's a +5. So a 5 plus a 6 is an 11. He missed it by 1. Now that vehicle, instead of being marked first fire, which I should have marked before, he's marked intensive fire. So let me find an intensive fire counter. He's marked intensive fire, and we know he doesn't get any more shots this turn. So then this guy, I think he was at 6, something like that. He's going to continue to move. 6.5, 7. Now he only has 8 movement factors, so he's going to go 7.5, 8. Now he'd really like to stop in that position to shoot at that T-34, but he doesn't have any movement points left. But he's going to try anyway. So he's going to try for ESB. So to try for ESB, you're allowed up to 1/4 of your movement points extra, which would be an extra 2 in his case. So the extra 2. If he rolls a 12, he becomes immobilized. It means he was going so fast, he threw a track. So there are some modifiers to this. Let's roll a 5. So I don't think that's going to be enough. I think German is +2, and then +1 for every movement point that he tried to get. So he tried to get an extra 1 to stop. So that would be an extra total +3. So he rolled an 8, which is not a 12. So he does get that movement point to stop. So he is not finishing his turn with a motion counter. He is in a stop position. Okay. Now, the T-34, even though he does have line of sight to the little tank, he says the odds are too small to hit him, so I'm not going to shoot. Plus, I want to see what that Tiger does. So here comes the Tiger. It's the Tiger's turn. King Tiger. He's going to start for 1. Go to here for 2. Now notice he's not spending a half for the road. He's spending a full 1, and that's because he is buttoned up right now, because that's his default. Unless I actually put a counter on him that shows that he's crew exposed, he's going to be considered buttoned up. So that was 2 to there, and then he's going to go. Now the smart thing to do would be to turn my covered arc right now, but we're going to say, for fun, he's not going to. So he's going to go 3 to here. Now the T-34 says, oh, before he gets a chance to turn with his strong 26 front armor, I'm going to take a side shot at him and see what I can do to him. So, once again, the base to hit number is a 10. So he needs a 10 to hit the Tiger. Now let's add the modifiers in, a 10 or less. Let's add the modifiers in. The T-34 is buttoned up, so that's a +1. The King Tiger is moving, that's +2, so now we're at +3. The T-34 spent 1 or less movement points in the T-34's line of sight. I mean, the King Tiger spent 1 or less movement points in the T-34's line of sight. So that's another +2, so now we're at +5. So that's looking like a bad shot. Oh, but wait, the King Tiger is extra large. See, the King Tiger has 2 red numbers for the armor. So that means he's an extra large target. So that's adding +2 to the -2 to the shot. So now the net result is there's a +3 on the dice, and he needs a 10. So that means effectively he needs a 7 or less, and he rolls a 7. Now not only does he roll a 7, but he kept rate of fire, because he rolled a 1 on the colored die, and on the T-34, it's a 1 in the box. So he has him acquired now, and now we're going to see if he kills him. Now, had the T-34 been smart, he would have called an APCR shot, but I forgot. So we're going to look on the 76L, on the C7.31 AP to kill table, 76L, and we have to use the red one because he's Russian. The number is a 13. So if you see that the colored die was smaller than the white die, that means it was a turret hit, and it was a turret hit in the side. So if you look at this guy, his turret number is an 8, and it's boxed. So that means, his side armor is an 8, and it's boxed, which means that the turret goes up 1 column from the 8. So it goes from the 8 to the 11. So the Russian gun has a 13 to kill against an 11 armor. That means he's going to need a 2. He's going to need snake eyes to actually kill him. And a 2 won't even kill him. It'll just shock him. So we roll, oops, and we get another 7. On the to kill roll, it has no effect. It just bounces off the side of the Tiger. Well, now the Tiger's mad. But remember, the T-34 kept the rate of fire. Can it fire again? No, it really can't right now, because the Tiger only spent 1 movement point, and that only allows the T-34 to take that first shot. So until the Tiger spends another movement point, it will not be able to shoot. So the Tiger is going to go turn for 4, go 5. Now, why isn't the T-34 shooting? Well, T-34 really can't penetrate that frontal armor of a 26. 5, 6, 7. And now it wants to get into a fist fight with the T-34, and it's going to stop for 8. Now, the King Tiger can wait until the advanced fire phase to shoot, or it can decide to shoot right now. because it still has movement points left to do so, and it can even shoot on that stop MP. Now the difference between shooting during the movement phase, which is considered bounding fire, and shooting during the advanced fire phase is you don't get rate of fire in the advanced fire phase. You do get it during the movement phase, but you don't get acquisition during the movement phase, and you get it during the advanced fire phase. So weigh your options. It could be that the Tiger wants to take a shot and then drive off again. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? If you notice, he's got red movement points. That means we had to roll before he ever moved. And if you roll a 12, he's immobilized. 9, so he's fine. So he stops there for 7 or whatever it was, and then he's going to take a shot. So now let's see what we need to hit the T-34. So base number is a 10. He's buttoned up, is a +1. The tank moved, so we're going to add in bounding fire, which is case B, and case C. So that's a total of +4. So +4 for moving, and buttoned up +5. So he'll need a 5 to hit him. So we'll roll the dice and see what happens. A 7. Let's, for fun, say we had rolled this. A 5. Would that be a hit? Well, normally it would be, except, remember the T-34 is hull down? Because it's not a turret hit, the red dice is not smaller than the white dice. It's a hull hit, which means it exploded into the wall instead of into the hull of the tank. So either case, it's a miss. So he missed him. Now he could, if he wanted to, he could start up again and try to drive away. So let's do that. He was at 7, 11. No, he doesn't become immobilized. Then he goes to here for 12, and then oops, he ran out of movement. Oh no, even at 11, he's out of movement points. So he'd be marked in motion because he only has 11 movement points. I think that's what the count was. So he's in motion. Okay. So we're done. Now it's the defensive fire phase. He's already fired. He fired, but he kept his rate of fire, so he's going to try again. So he's going to try something called a deliberate immobilization. Now, deliberate immobilization, you have to be within 6 hexes, and you have to be able to penetrate the armor, the weakest armor on the tank. So, in which case he can. So, so he's going to take a shot. Now, the problem with that is he has to have +5 to the dice. So he's going to roll and see what happens. If he does immobilize him, hit him, you don't roll a 2-kill number. You just roll the 2 hit. If it's a hit, it is immobilized. So we roll a 5. Nope. But guess what? He kept the rate of fire again. So, oh, you know what, though? He can't do that because the King Tiger is hull down 2, and you have to get a hull hit. So he's not going to do that. He's going to take a regular shot and hope for a critical hit. He's going to try APCR. So he rolls a 7. He has no APCR, and he did not take the shot. So he rolls again. This time he gets a 7, and that's just a regular hit. And so now he tries to kill him. A 7 won't do it. He needed like a -10 because of that 26 armor. So that's it. So now we go to the advanced fire phase for the Germans. This tank destroyer right here is going to try a shot at the T-34. He's going to look on his back, and he's got a 1944 APCR number of 4. So he says he's going to try his APCR. Let's see if he can hit him. And he rolls a 7. Now, that's a miss because the base number is 10. He moved as a +5, +3 for being non-turreted, +2 for bounding fire. And that makes it a 12. Now, does he keep rate of fire? He does have a 2 in his rate of fire box, but remember I said you don't get rate of fire in the advanced fire phase. So he does not, but he does get to acquire the T-34. Okay, so that's about it. We can skip the route phase and the advanced phase and stuff like that. During the advanced phase, vehicles can change from button-up status to crew exposed to button-up, but nobody wants to change that. So, you know what, actually, I'm wrong about that. They do want to change that. The German King Tiger wants to become crew exposed. This is the wrong counter. Let me get the right counter. He becomes crew exposed. Okay. now it's the rally phase. No rally activities for the Russians or the Germans. Now the Russian prep fire phase. The Russian is now going to take a shot with his machine guns at the crew of the German tank. So he's got a 2 and a 4, doubled to a 12. So it'll be a 12. You get +2 for protection for being only partially exposed. And they shoot and they get an 8, which is a 10. So the German King Tiger has to take a task check. So he rolls, and he rolls a 9. Now I believe King Tiger crews are like Tiger crews, where they have morale of 9. Yeah, morale of 9. So they pass it. So they're just fine. Otherwise they would have pinned. Okay, so now he gets to fire his main armament. He's going to try a shot of his main armament at the little tank destroyer because he's really not having any luck penetrating that armor. So he rolls. He gets an 8. So let's see if that hits or not. So the target is hull down, and he did get a turret hit. Buttoned up is +1. Small target is +1. So that makes 10. 10 at that range is exactly what he needed to hit. So he did indeed hit him. Now if you look on him, first we remember his to kill number, his base to kill number on AP is 13. And he is a 4, but it's circled. And because it's circled, it means it goes down to a 3. So a 13 minus 3 is a 10. So on a 10, he will shock him. On a 9 or less, he will destroy him. On 11, he will possibly shock him. And he rolls, and he gets a 6. So he is destroyed. Now, we get to roll for the crew to see if the crew survives. I roll a 4, which is 1 greater than the 3, so the crew does not survive. If the crew did survive, then we'd have a little crew pop out, be using hazardous movement, and then somebody else could shoot at him, do their damage. So we did kill him. Now, if that number, on that to kill number, it wasn't a 6 that I rolled, but it was a 5, that would have been half of what I needed, so he would have gotten a little hat. And if, just for fun, there was some wind blowing, then guess what? Depending on the direction of the wind, we would get smoke 2 hexes down. So that can make the battlefield very, very interesting. But that's not what he rolled, and there is no wind. So he is just destroyed, and the crew is dead inside. Poor guys. Okay, so he is marked prep fire. He did not keep his rate of fire. He does have the option of intensive firing, but other than shooting at the King Tiger, which he knows he's not going to hurt, there's no real point in doing that. So now we go to the movement phase. So the only thing left to move is the T-70. So the T-70 is going to start for 1. It's 1944, so he does not have to roll for platoon movement separation. It goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He pays an extra 1 for the wreck and the hex. 9, 10, 11, 12. Now the King Tiger is starting to get nervous about this rear shot. So even though it's a puny little T-70, bad things can happen. So he's going to stop for 13, and on his 13th movement point, he's going to declare that he's firing. So let's see what he needs to hit. He needs a 10, plus 4 because he moved on his dice, plus another 1 because he's buttoned up, plus 2 because of the moving target. So now he's at +7, but it's a large target, makes it a +5. I think that's all there was. Yeah, I believe that's all there was. So it's a +5. So he will hit him on a 5. So he rolls, and he gets a 3. So let's pretend, just for the fun of it, he said APCR. Okay? I really meant to. I just forgot, like I always do, to say it. So the APCR number, if you look on the APCR table of a 45L, is a 12. Now, if you look at the range 0 to 1 hexes, APCR less than 57 millimeters +3, so now it's a 15. So the Tiger's rear armor is an 8, boxed. Now that goes up to an 11. But because it's a rear shot, you add 1 to the modified to kill number for a rear shot, so that 15 goes up to a 16, minus 11 is a 4. So now we roll the to kill, And what do we roll? We roll Snake Eyes. So that not only destroys the king tiger, but because it's half of what we needed to kill, it is burning. And the Russians are off to Berlin.